So this is Terms of Service fantasy reader with Daria Mejic and our wonderful audience together. We're going to share and contribute to this. So thank you so much, Daria. If you want to carry on. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So I will move myself from this main view because there are so many other things to see. Okay. A little bit about like where I'm coming from. So as an artist and researcher, I'm deeply interested in how technology comes to mediate reality and mediate our perceptions of belonging and communicating in the world and forming ourselves in the world. And especially in that place, I'm interested in how we can unlearn harmful habituation with and through technology. Um, and in that space, I'm specifically interested in the space of embodied participatory knowledge that can actually help into creating connective knowledge making across disciplines. And now I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and feel the ground beneath you. So you can also turn off your cameras if you don't feel comfortable. The important thing is that now you're feeling comfortable in the space with yourself, and just try to feel your spine elongated as if you would be feeling a line going straight from the sky to the ground through your body. This is why feet are important to feel grounded. So imagine you are traveling somewhere far away, enough far away that you need to actually get another SIM card in order to communicate with people there and back home. So you switch your SIM card, and during this trip, you need to do some emails and communication with people. So you try to log into your Gmail, but you have two-step verification active, which means that they're sending a code to your SMS with your original SIM card to be able to get into your Gmail, which is really wonderful because it's a security procedure. Then you realize that you actually lost your SIM card, the original SIM card that is connected to many services that you're using online. Just sit with this feeling for a moment and think, how many apps could you actually be logged out from at that moment? And how much would this cause complications for you to lose all of these accounts completely? Just sit with this feeling. Would you experience it as loss of part of your identity, your whole identity, or just some data? And the loss of which account would hurt you the most? And then you actually realize that your SIM card is in a pocket and it was there the whole time. And you put it back in your phone and nothing was lost. It's all there. Now sit with this feeling again. And now with a deep inhalation, taking fresh air, let it travel through your body and take out all the anxiety from all these locked out account moments and all these moments where you actually didn't know whether you'll be able to access your data ever again. And let that air just go through your body, take that anxiety out through the ground. And then one other deep inhalation to cleanse a bit more. And then you can slowly open your eyes again. Okay, besides having this as a trick experiment, very vicious with having the feeling of loss and then not loss again, it is more about how often we don't even allow ourselves to feel a loss, and how much of these processes of anxiety happen every day, like the stress cycle that actually never becomes a cycle because it is constantly being accumulated through technology. Now we come slowly to our topic of today, and this is accounts and identity and how we actually relate to technology in that sense. I guess everyone saw I'm Not a Cat, but we're going to see it again because it is so amazing. And it is actually one of the best examples of how anonymity traveled a path from the beginning of the internet to today. From nobody knows you're a dog and everything is a part of imagination, our identities are constructs, gender is not important, right? And all of these other identity politics that became even more reinforced and even more important, even more exploited, up to something like this.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to take
we're
a
trying
look.
to, can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
I can see that. I think if you click the up arrow next to this.
Yeah, so when we talk with people from newer generations, they don't even think about why would someone even think about not being themselves online. There is no such thing because you are you. There is no reason for you not to be you because that's how things are. And this tells about how habitual behavior creates identity perception, because habitually we're used to customizing our identities towards the applications that we use the most. And the thing about this vicious circle, or doesn't have to be vicious, but it is a circle because it's being repetitive, it's something that happens every day, is the level of dependency of software. So for example, if you have an Android phone, and this is something that I actually did ask openly on the Google community, how do you use an Android phone without a Google account? What if I don't want to have a Google account, for example? I never got an answer. But the answer is that you don't use Android without a Google account. These dependencies are existing on every level of technology usage today. And the thing about habitual behavior is that it becomes something that is unconscious. We repeat it every day, we repeat it, and then slowly it becomes something that is just happening in the background process, and we don't really realize that we're doing something. And then these apps slowly change because they're updating, they're synchronizing, they're becoming better, optimized. And things like stopping your YouTube video, like in the middle of you watching it, becomes normal because the app is actually trying to see whether you're present with it. And these like microaggressions are something that we maybe are notice like at first, but then after a few days or a few uses, actually we stop noticing, and then we just accept them. And this all could be more or less problematic But then there's some deeper issues involved, which are also pretty interesting to think about.
TikTok just sent me a message saying they're going to suspend my account if I don't stop impersonating John Green. And like, I get it, kinda, TikTok. Like, I also don't want to be impersonating myself, but you know, to be honest, I don't know which parts of me are constructed or a facade and which parts of me are like really real, right? Like, I don't know for sure where that line is. And frankly, I think it's a little weird for you as an app to insist that I do that incredibly complicated work in order to be able to continue participating on your platform. Like, I'm going to try to figure out where my authentic self lies, okay? I've been trying to figure it out for 43 years. But in the meantime, it'd be super helpful if I could use your app because it helps me fight the creeping sense of dread.
The creeping sense of dread. Exactly. So habitual behavior is a dopamine-based sensation and activity. And dopamine actually helps us learn, helps us face dread, right? The daily dread. And what is interesting there is what happens when our identity is something that gets predicted, constructed, reinforced, customized, and guided algorithmically. We start having expectations from apps themselves about like how we're supposed to behave. And the real us is actually something that we're supposed to prove that we are. The thing about this expected behavior is that we don't really understand which part of our behavior causes the system to think we are something. So it is an accumulated set of data that is completely unpredictable and unforeseeable from the side of us personally, but it causes a lot of decisions to be made on many levels about us and about our um, availability of the service to us. So the terms of service are actually this battleground where we sign this contract every time that we update a service or reinstall something or install a new app that actually has communication with another app. And I mean, your choice is not to use it or to use it and accept everything. Your choice is not somewhere in the middle. It is sometimes to customize a few things, but it's basically most of the time use it or leave it, right? And not using it can make your life a hell of a complication. You can do that way, but also it can be really difficult. So my example was an interesting art project where I actually I had my account disabled immediately when I opened it. And then I had this wonderful correspondence with Facebook where they were asking me to take a photo of myself holding a piece of paper with the clearly written code that they sent and my username and password. And I was thinking, how does this in the world prove an identity? This is even weirder than the real name policy. And then I was like, what? And then I realized, oh, it's for collecting facial recognition data. I mean, there's no other reason. So then I was thinking, oh, so I can take a photo of someone else and send it to them to just see what will happen. So I sent a photo of someone else and they accepted it. And then why not push this a bit further? So then I made a whole account that is based on people posing with the same code. So they all became this identity, this collective identity of 41136. Opening up this question of what, like this rigidity of identity. So they even say, even if you're a business or an art project or whatever you are, you need to prove it personally. So yeah, so I did it in a multi-personal way. Facebook has the very, very famous real name policy that has real world consequences, much more than Instagram. And the exact phrase in the terms of service is that when people stand behind their opinions and actions, our community is safer and more accountable. For this reason, you must use the same name that you use in everyday life. Provide accurate information about yourself. Create only one account, your own, and use your timeline for personal purposes. The way that they interpreted this was use a name from an ID. Whether that's a straight line to make this conclusion or not, that's a different question. So the issue with this, with the implementation of the real name policy, was that the way that this was proven was through people actually reporting other people who don't have a real name. So that was the way of them testing whether someone has a real name. So it had real world consequences in the sense that there was a huge backlash against the transgender community, and very explicitly attacking specific people, specific names, and basically rising a level of awareness so that a lot of news outlets were writing. So to that level, it was a visible attack on a specific community. And when we think about this sort of default implementation, it's very interesting to think about like normalizing codification and normalizing structures like identity structures in the way that, okay, why wouldn't someone have an identity in an ID? Well, for many reasons. For many reasons. If you are a political activist in a certain country, if you are a victim of domestic violence, if you are for any reason having a different set of beliefs than a dominant aggressive mode of cultural behavior, you name it. If you are Native American, this was also a huge community that was affected on many levels because of the types of names that people have and the way that it is interpreted online. One other current example that I would just like to show is the farmers' protest and its connection to Twitter. If people don't know about the farmers' protest, it's something that has been going on for years and years. And for years and years, they had problem with Twitter because of the way that the Indian government is exploiting social media for political purposes and imprisoning activists. And the farmers' protest is basically a protest of agricultural workers against big corporations and taking over of land and devastating the country. And that also caused the arrest of a 21-year-old climate change activist who was arrested 5 days ago, and there is still not news about her, from what I know. But in any case, knowing Indian police or their way of communicating, she is most likely being tortured in prison. And why I'm showing this is because the reasoning behind her imprisonment is that she shared a Google Doc that they interpreted as a toolkit for mobilization. And this is filed against their act against terrorism. So Google Doc, terrorism, and terms of service that actually play in between something that could be a service and legal implementation that is actually made always most rigorously on the level of a state and country. So we have things like, for example, Parler that is back online, if people don't know, which is really interesting because deplatforming is also a very controversial topic, whether that is something that is any sort of solution. But deplatforming brings some other questions that come from digital policy that are important for our conversation about real life consequences of our daily lives, such as content moderation, because content moderation is more and more being done algorithmically, which causes a lot of issues that are connected to algorithmic culture in general, and net neutrality and zero rating, which are still a huge issue because of the way that telecoms actually exploit access. So that brings us to access that we think is something that, for example, in the US, everyone has, but the way that it is communicated and the way that like packages, like mobile packages are conveyed are actually already bringing a certain type of use to people. I need to hurry up with all of this serious business. And that brings us to dependencies, where we need to rethink what would be alternative business models where data wouldn't be so like crucial for companies to be exploited, so that to exploit data so that they could work. So alternative business models would be important to think about if we want to think about a more decentralized system. And a decentralized system is the only system. This is the only thing that is like it's very black and white. If the way that that the tech market is working is going towards centralization, and this is the biggest issue of governmentality, because you cannot have you can if you have a certain amount of power on one side and all this data is getting accumulated across the world, that is the biggest danger that we can face, because that is basically creating a very black and white picture of power in society. So decentralization is a must. That is not all black in this black and white picture. We're bringing some color here because nothing is black. It is just a world that is usually seen as something that is black. When we talk about data, it is seen as this world of big corporations and poor users, and we cannot do anything and they can do everything. Well, it's also very highly negotiable, this space of where people can have like access, and in terms of giving an opinion. There is a lot of public fora that actually offer input from the public, from civil society, and there's a lot of organizations that that we can work with as individuals and give our complaints further. I will share a resource later on, so just heads up that there are like organizations that actually do the big work here, so that we're not alone. But more importantly, speaking of alone, we're not even alone as users in using our technology. And one of the things that actually creates this issue of a black and white world is the illusion of being alone and the enforcement of being alone. So the codification actually works very similarly to something that is in transactional analysis called script. So when we say terms of service as a code of conduct, as something that is a receipt, like a script of behavior, basically, it is very similar to what in transactional analysis they call a life script, which is transactional analysis is a modality in psychology and therapy that works on the level of relationships. So scripts are a way of creating a life scenario where we are playing a role, and this role is very rigid. So our role today, and in a space of becoming more somatic and becoming more available to our body knowledge, is to actually get out of the space of this rigid structure that is formed through code, that is formed through the rules, that is formed through excessive individuation, that actually just leads to more stressors and more fear-based behavior, and into a space of reading and speaking out, and then reimagining through the reading. And moreover, then imagining to perform, because when we perform identity, we are able to access other parts of our fluid self. And there is a difference between acting and performance in terms of performing really feeling something, but then allowing the theater experience to actually help with our plural selves. So this way of boxing identities into something that are little coded, customized versions that are imagined and allowed through categories that are very algorithmic are super rigid and are boxes that do not need to constrain us completely. But if we repeat that every day, then we actually become that. But if we repeat enacting every day, then we constantly get out of these boxes. So our role is here, and maybe later on, is to enact as much as we can in a more theatrical experience. And moreover, in stress studies, actually synced group behavior helps complete a stress cycle much faster than you would ever alone. So this is why working together can actually speed up this process. Yeah, did people start writing apps in the chat? This is something that I didn't take a look at. Because, yes, so when you think of an app, write it in the chat so that we don't use all the same apps. Let me see.
So Daria, you're asking us to put an app that you would like, that we'd like to kind of look at for the terms of service today for the fantasy reader.
Yeah. So everyone, ideally, everyone who wants to participate. Also, if you don't want to participate, that's totally fine. But if you want to participate, think of an app that you would like to zoom in on, and choose one sentence, 2 sentences, a phrase. It could be even just 3 words that you find are shocking, inspiring, whatever motivates you, and just write the name of the app in the chat. So the thing that we will be using today is this method called pointing and calling, which is a method in occupational safety in Japan, mostly done in Japan for avoiding mistakes by pointing at important indicators and verbally calling out the status. So this is the strategy of theater that we will be working with today, which is also something that helped prevent 85% of mistakes in public transport in Japan. Just the system. So it's very efficient. It's not only playful. The important factor is that while they're pointing and calling out, they're activating their eyes, their mouth, their hands, gestures, and ears, because they're listening to all of this process, like speaking out. So the first little exercise is to pick an app on your phone and take note of how you got there, like whether it was easy, whether it was difficult, whether you had to go back and forth, whether you cannot even notice at all how you got there. That's also interesting. Like, I just got there, I don't know. Anything that you notice about this process, because remember we were talking about habitual behavior and how it's actually unconscious, and how often we do these activities without realizing that we're doing them. So, and then if you had something that was interesting for you as an experience, you can share with the group. Also, is it counterintuitive, like the process of how they're called? And because sometimes something that you would expect like the privacy policy to be is in another wording, and then the terms of service are actually the privacy policy, and then they're not in the settings, but they are somewhere. Is it okay to go to Scientology website? Do they have a privacy policy? Yeah, of course. It could be any service. It could be a website. It doesn't have to be like an app on your phone. Okay, I love this. They're so different, the apps. Beautiful. Okay, so if someone has an exciting experience they want to share, you can jump in. Otherwise, we can move to being actors.
The Scientology website has like a terms of use, and it's really, really short. And then several times in the terms of use, they link to their privacy policy, which is really long and kind of weird.
So they're being sneaky about, they like lure you in with the short version and then you have to do your own digging to get to the long. Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't happen to click on the privacy policy links on the first page, you're not seeing anything. It's like literally like 3 or 4 paragraphs, and then the privacy policy is really long.
But this also tells us about the importance of privacy within terms of service, because it is becoming a bigger element of all terms of service across applications. And this trend I saw in many places, that the terms of service is really small, and then you actually have like a huge or several privacy policies, like for different for different implementations. Audible was easy. Okay. Okay. Are people ready to enact? Okay. So now we will do a round where everyone will be the main actor for their terms of service by choosing an element that they want to point and call, and read out this phrase or sentence or paragraph slowly, emphasizing the words and also explaining the words through gestures of your body and hands. The rest of us will follow the main actor with our hands and bodies. We will do the same that the actor is doing. Is there someone who would like to start, or I could also start? Maybe I can start to get the things. Do people want a bit of time to go and read also?
And Daria, do you want us to put the text in the chat, or how would you like us to share the text of what we're going to read?
You could put the text in the chat if you want. That would be really useful. I didn't even think about that because it was more about sharing of the enacting process. But it would be great if you would put the text in the chat so that I could see whether we have some interesting patterns showing up later on. Thank you, Kathy, for the idea. So, do people feel like following me already? Or reading a bit more?
Happy to follow you, Daria, if you're ready.
Okay.
I could jump in too.
Okay. While we are not required to do so. We may access, review, screen, and delete your content at any time for any reason, including to provide and develop the services, or if we think your content violates these terms. You alone, though, remain responsible for the content you create, upload, post, send, or store through the service. Continue
We
away.
reserve the right to accept or refuse membership or to restrict use of the service in our discretion. You may not transfer or assign your membership or any service benefits. We may take actions we deem reasonably necessary to prevent fraud and abuse, including placing restrictions on the amount of content or other services that can be accessed from the service at any one time.
Privacy policy 1.3 out of 11.1. If you want more information on the 3 mailings procedure, we kindly advise you to pay extra attention to Articles 5.6, 6.17, 9.3 of this policy of privacy. This 3 mailings procedure applies to the processing of your personal data when you fill out any form, whether online or on paper, that is followed by 3 post mailings as described in this privacy policy. 3 mailings form.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. This is from the Fitbit app. Fitbit may enable you to post, upload, store, share, send, or display photos, images, video, data, text, music, exercise regimens, food logs, recipes, comments, and other information and content, your content, to and via the Fitbit service. You retain all rights to your content that you post to the Fitbit service. By making your content available on or through the Fitbit service, you hereby grant a Fitbit non-exclusive, transferable, sub-licensable, worldwide, royalty-free, license to use, copy, modify, publicly display, publicly perform, reproduce, translate, create derivative works from, and distribute your content in whole, in part, including your name, likeness in any media.
Actually, we could do an applause for everyone. I just realized. We could do applause for everyone.
I can go next. You may not use any deep link, page scrapper, robot, spider, or other automatic device, program, algorithm, or methodology, or any similar equivalent manual process to access, acquire, copy, or monitor any portion of the site or any content or in any way reproduce or circumvent the navigational structure or presentation of the site or any content to obtain or attempt to obtain any material, documents, or information through any means not purposely made available through the site. UMS reserve the right to bar any such activity.
How are you doing? Any more? Kathy, do you want?
I have one. Do we have time? Daria?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We do.
I was trying to find the one about Google Maps and how they sell your private information, but now I can't find it. So I just did the like Google broadly. So this is talking about how long they're going to keep your stuff even after you delete it. Duration. This license lasts for as long as your content is protected by intellectual property rights. If you remove from our services any content that's covered by this license, then our systems will stop making that content publicly available in a reasonable amount of time. But there are two exceptions. We'll read one. If you made your content available through other companies' services, it is possible that search engines, including Google Search, will continue to find and display your content as part of their search. Unbelievable. Sorry, I just realized I didn't post the text.
Do we have some other actors? What did you say, Kathy?
This was great. Suina, do you want to participate? And it's fine if you don't.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Some other things to note in this process that you can do actually every day is being aware of dark patterns. It's actually a design principle that keeps appearing. You think that it's gone and it just keeps appearing. Things like infinite scroll, things like clickbait, and of course the famous like button that ruined us all. But there is also something called environment design in behavioral studies, where you can actually try to change and call out these patterns that keep like changing your environment, your software environment, without you understanding that it's being changed all the time and like causing even more confusion. So you actually need to kind of keep using the service however it's made, and try and organize it a bit for yourself. Like environment design really helps with understanding your personal habits, because then you see, oh, I keep doing this every day. Oh, and maybe I can actually try and like remove, for example, the phone into another room at this time of day, so it will be better for me, or put it in airplane mode, for example. Or maybe look at like deleting a few apps from time to time. It's called the commitment device. And it became really famous from Victor Hugo, who actually had a contract for the Notre Dame book that we all love. And he couldn't write a damn thing. He was stuck. He had a writer's block, and he actually locked away all of his clothes so that he wouldn't have where to go. He locked away all of his clothes so he will only have one thing to wear, and he stayed for 6 months and wrote one of the best books ever. So that's called the commitment device. isolation can actually be sometimes productive if you do it intentionally, right? Luckily, there are some wonderful people in this world, and whoopsie, we're also one of them. But one of these wonderful groups of people are the people behind Terms of Service Didn't Read, that have add-on for browsers that you can install and that can really go fast through different services and tell you how bad is this app or how not bad is it. So for example, I will just add it now on this computer because I don't use this computer very often, so I didn't actually install it, but now you can see it while I'm doing this. And it's as fast as, so this was less than 1 minute. Everyone can do this, and I will send the link to the chat so that it's closer to you. This is another thing of environment design. You design your environment so that beneficial behavior is closer to you. So here, downloads, it's a direct link. You just go to the downloads and you install it in your browser, and it helps you with terms of service. And if you are interested in learning more about digital policy, specifically, the Digital Watch Observatory is a really good place that has a monthly newsletter. It's completely free. There's nothing. They are an NGO that actually does research. So it's basically all of the most important digital policy news every month. And finally, the most important thing is how to make the cat filter in Zoom. So you can actually install the app that I was reading, so Snapchat camera on your computer, and then in Zoom, you will be able to choose the Snapchat camera instead of your camera, and you can be the cat. You can actually, like the first, I don't know if now I stopped sharing or we don't have time, but the first filter in Snapchat cam is the cat. So I will end with that. And this was rhyming.
Very nice rhyme at the end. I will end with that. I am not a cat. I love it. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments you'd like to share before we wrap up? Stephen, was that a yes? Was that a you?
Just to say, great job. This is awesome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. This is such a cool program.
Oh, yeah, I also wanted to say that if you want to keep doing drama with me, this is an ongoing thing. So I will be building more dramatic experiences and building these dramatic structures and creating these web operas. And if you want your voice to be like featured and recorded and all this stuff that we're not doing now because it's not like we're not using content. This was an experience-based thing. This is a cat.
I know there's the cat. Ellen's got the cat. Daria, do you want to put your email or a website where people can join, or do you want to have them send me their email to share with you?
People can write, yeah, either to me or to the Terms of Service Fantasy Reader at email.com.
Rather than having people post their emails in the chat.
Yeah. Whatever is less work for people, I will post this link, email.
Great. So if you're interested in working with Daria in the future for, what did you call it? Operatic reader?
Web opera.
Web opera. Please email Daria directly. And if you lose this and you forget, then you can just respond to the email that you for your registration confirmation, and that should come to me and I can pass that on. Daria,
thank you so much for being here.
Yes, Thank you. Thank you all, everyone. Like, Brad, I have to say, like, watching your animation, that's what inspired me to like, okay, I'm going to jump into this too. That was awesome. And thank you everyone it was great to see people figure out how we can connect in this virtual world, and be cats or anything else. Daria, thank you. Thank you to the Boulder Library Foundation. We will upload this recording to YouTube, and Daria will also be using that in research as well. If you have any questions about that, you can write to me. I'm at lanek@boulderlibrary.org. And I want to say thank you so much to everyone. I'm going to stop the recording.